Okay. Good evening, everybody. Tonight's Monday night, the Chumash class. I'll mention it again later. This Wednesday night, there is no Zoom class. Next week, there is no Zoom class Monday or Wednesday. So the next Zoom class is 2 weeks from tonight. Mitzvah Shem. Okay. 2 weeks from tonight will be February 1st. February 1st will be the next class. Okay, let's get to work. There's a lot to learn about. This week is Parshat Boy. That Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Baal Pari, come to Pari, and warn him again. And basically, it speaks about the last 3 plagues of the 10 plagues. Now, the commentaries ask. Normally, Hashem said to Moshe, Lech el Pari. Lech means go to Pari. Boy el Pari means come to Pari. Hashem grammatically should have said to Moshe Rabbeinu, go to Pari, not come to Pari. He should say go to Pari. So the Balaturim says the reason for that is the Torah is alluding to that Bo, Beit, Aleph equals numerically 3. And there's 3 plagues in this coming Parsha. So the Torah uses the word boy instead of lech. That's the simple meaning. There's another remarkable Balaturim of a little bit further in the Parsha, when it says Pari calls back Moshe Rabbeinu, and he says, "Vayem aleim go, okay, serve God. Mi v'mi aholchem. Mi v'mi aholchem." That's in Parakut Pasuk Ches. Who's going? Who's going? So Moshe Rabbeinu said, "B'nareinu u'vizkinenu nelech." Our young, our old, everybody's going. So the Balaturim says it's just very cute, but very interesting. Pari basically, again, how Pari knew this is not relevant. Pari is telling Moshe Rabbeinu, you can tell me you're going to the land of Eretz Yisrael. Who's going already? You're all dying in the desert. Pari says to Moshe, Mi v'mi aholchem. Who's going? And the Balaturim says, interesting, Mi v'mi aholchem, who is going, is the numerical value of Kalev and Bin Nun. Kalev and Yeshua Bin Nun. So basically, the way the Balaturim explains this is very cute. Pari says to Moshe Rabbeinu, why do you guys want to go out? Only one's going to go to Eretz Yisrael is Yeshua and Kalev, because everybody else is going to die out in the 40 years of the desert. So Moshe Rabbeinu said to him, no, B'nareinu v'zkinenu, because the decree in the desert was only for the people between the ages of 20 and 60. People under 20 and people over 60 did not die in the 40 years in the Midbar. So that's what Moshe Rabbeinu Pari says, why are you going? The only guy's going is going to be Kalev and Yeshua. So what are you going out for? So he answers, B'nareinu v'zkinenu. What are you talking about? The younger kids are under 20 is going, the older 60s and then going. So therefore, what's the problem? A lot of people are going to be going out. That's what the Balaturim says, these 2 interesting words. But in Chassidus, it explains a much deeper concept. What does it mean, Baal Pari? And the lesson, obviously everything's a lesson. Lech means go. Boy means come. When I say boy or come, it means come with me. Go, you can go by yourself. If you're coming, you're either coming to me or with me. So Chassidus explains like this. Many times, Moshe Rabbeinu is now going to Pari. Moshe Rabbeinu has to break the evil of Pari. Finally, the final 3 plagues that broke Pari completely, that he threw the Jewish people out of Egypt, it says these were the last 3 plagues. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu, as great as Moshe Rabbeinu was, he was afraid. He was actually afraid to go to Pari. Pari was superpower of evil. How in the world are Moshe Rabbeinu able to go to Pari? It's a very difficult thing. Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, you're not going alone. I'm not telling you here, Lech el Pare. I'm telling you, boy, I'm going with you. Come with me to Pare. What does this mean? When a Jew has issues in life, a Jew sometimes gets scared of being able to handle the pressures and the issues and the difficulties. It's a party out there. There's power of evil. There's difficulties, challenges. It's all evil, relatively speaking. Hashem says to the Jew, you never go alone. Boy al Pare. Come to Pare. I'm coming with you. You know, there's a very famous story of a person walking with Hashem in the sand, and there's always 4 footprints. And finally, when he came to difficult places, he only saw 2 footprints. And he said to God, you weren't with me then? I had to go myself? Hashem said to him, no, you're making a big mistake. In those difficult places, I carried you. It was only my footsteps you saw because I actually carried you. So Chassidus explains this concept of Bay al Pare means the Jew needs to keep in mind that any time there's something of evil that needs to be dealt with by the Jew, you're never alone. There's a lot of songs about you're never alone. A Jew is always going with Hashem. And that's what it means. Boy al Pare, come with me to Pare, you're not going alone. Okay, as we move along in the Parsha, there's 2 mitzvahs that Hashem gave the Jewish people in Mitzrayim. There was one mitzvah, he gave them dam milah, to circumcise themselves. And there was another mitzvah of bringing the Korban Pesach. Now, the Korban Pesach, as the pasuk says in the parsha, on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, the Jews on the 10th day of Nisan should take the sheep, tie it to the bed, and 4 days later bring the Korban Pesach. So the Medrash said, why did they need 4 days? So simply the reason is they had to make sure there were no blemishes on the animal because the sacrifice had to be complete and whole and not blemished. But another thing is brought down. The Jews needed mitzvahs to be able to get them out of Egypt. We say in the Haggadah of Pesach, that Erem ve'erya, the Jews in Mitzrayim were spiritually naked. They had no mitzvahs. They didn't keep. Most Jews in Egypt worshipped idols. Only Shevet Levi did a bris. The Jews were empty for mitzvahs, naked for mitzvahs. They needed merits. They needed schusim to be able to go out of Egypt. So Hashem gave them 2 mitzvahs. One was take the Korban Pesach, which was the idol of Egypt, and tie it to the bed. That took a lot of guts and self-sacrifice, Mesiras Nefesh, on the Jews' part to be able to do that. And then the second mitzvah Hashem gave him was what was called dam milah. Dam milah means Korban Pesach, the bris. So the question is, what is unique about these 2 mitzvahs? And it's very interesting. There's a common denominator between Korban Pesach and bris milah. Normally, you don't get capital punishment. You don't get capital punishment for a positive mitzvah. People to mute themselves, please. You don't get capital punishment for transgressing positive mitzvahs. There's only 2 positive mitzvahs that if you don't do it, you get kares. Hashem makes you die younger. What are they? Bris milah and Korban Pesach. The Torah says any person that doesn't bring the Korban Pesach, That soul will die early. By Bris Milah, it says, whoever doesn't circumcise themselves, that person is going to die. What's unique about these two mitzvahs of Dam Milah and Korban Pesach? So the Rebbe explains, the Korban Pesach, again, the sheep was the idol of Egypt. They worshipped the lamb. Okay? Shechting the lamb, slaughtering the lamb, represents destruction of evil. That's what it represents. By taking it and tying it to your bed, and in addition to that, you actually kill the idol of Egypt, that is what's called sur meirah. You're turning away from evil. That's why Hashem gave him the mitzvah of Korban Pesach, to shecht the idol of Egypt. In other words, turn away from evil. Then Hashem gave him another bloody mitzvah. So it's interesting. There are two bloody mitzvahs, Dam Pesach and Dam Milah. Both have to do with blood. Then Hashem gave him the mitzvah Bris Milah. What was the mitzvah Bris Milah? Actively binding yourself to Hashem. Actively binding yourself to Hashem. So in these two mitzvahs, one represents sur meirah, turning away from evil, which is Korban Pesach, and Dam Milah represents Asay Tov. But this basically represents, interestingly, all negative mitzvahs and all positive mitzvahs. Any transgression of a negative commandment, Chazal tell us, is really idol worshipping. What? Any transgression of a negative commandment is idol worshipping. Why? Hashem is standing right in front of us. God is all over the place. In front of his face, I'm thinking what I shouldn't, I'm talking what I shouldn't, or I'm doing what I shouldn't. Chas v'shalom, right? I was for you. Chas v'shalom. So basically, what are you doing? Conceptually, what are you doing? You are denying the presence of Hashem. That's why Chassidus explains, Avodah Zarah doesn't literally mean idol worshipping. Avodah Zarah, Zarah means foreign. Avodah Zarah means anything that's foreign to a Jew, and for a Jew is called Avodah Zarah. So shechting the Korban Pesach, which means getting rid of all these foreign ways of being connected to Hashem, that's what Korban Pesach is about. Literally killing the idol of Egypt. Getting rid of all Avodah Zarah, any Avodah. What's Bris Milah? Bris Milah is a bond with Hashem. It's a bond with Hashem. B'psarchem, physically. I'm actively binding myself to Hashem by giving myself a bris, or the male, whatever. Getting a bris done. Which means, in other words, what do positive mitzvahs do? They connect me to Hashem. So Hashem, and where do you see the ultimate connection physically? Permanent connection to Hashem is in the mitzvah Bris Milah. And just in passing, the Gemara says in Avodah Zarah that women don't lose out by not having a bris. The Gemara says, Nashim command mal yadamya. Women are considered circumcised, which means whatever advantage of bond with Hashem Bris Milah has, women have it automatically. So therefore, the Rabbi explains, Hashem picked for the Jews to go out of Egypt. They have two mitzvahs, basically, two fundamental mitzvahs. Turning away from evil and doing good. Hashem picked those two mitzvahs because those two mitzvahs represent destroying all idol worshipping, all foreign things, and at the same time binding yourself to Hashem in a physical body, that our body forever has this bond with Hashem to the level of Bris Milah. And through that, the Jews merited to be able to go out of Egypt. They weren't naked anymore for mitzvahs. As the Torah says, At Edom ve'eri, you're naked. These mitzvahs clothed the Jews in Sur Merah and Asay Tev, so therefore they were able to go out of Egypt. But there's a remarkable medrash that the Rabbi brings down in the Sikh. It's a medrash in Shmeis Rabbah. The medrash says like this. We mentioned before that the only tribe that actually did brisin in Mitzrayim was Shevet Levi. Nobody else did it. Nobody else did brisin except Shevet Levi. So now the Medrash says the following. We know there's a pasuk that says, Kol orel lo yochel bay. Anybody who's not circumcised cannot eat the Korban Pesach. They can't eat the Korban Pesach. So now the Medrash says the following. The night of Pesach, the night the Jews had to leave Egypt, Moshe Rabbeinu roasted his Korban Pesach. He broiled it by barbecue. Okay? Hashem, the Medrash says, Hashem made the smell go all over Egypt. All over Egypt. It smelled so good, the Medrash says, all the Jews came running to Moshe Rabbeinu. And they said, give us some of your Korban Pesach. Give us the Korban Pesach. Moshe Rabbeinu said, sorry guys, you need to have a bris. None of you have a bris, and therefore I can't give it to you. So the Medrash says the Jews went that night of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and they all circumcised themselves. Everybody circumcised themselves, and Moshe Rabbeinu gave them the Korban Pesach. That's what the Medrash says. The commentaries on the Medrash ask tons of questions, and with tons of answers. One fundamental question is, we know that you cannot do a bris at night. How is it possible that night the Jews went and did a bris? You're not allowed to do a bris at night. We all know that. You have to do a bris only during the day. Question number one. Question number two, even if they did the bris, it can't be counted. Why not? Because the din is, we say it every day in davening before Hoidu, if you say Korbanos. A Pesach eina nechal elo lemnuyav. A Korban Pesach can only be eaten for the people that were part of it at the time they shechted the Korban Pesach. You can't join later, come middle of the night, to join somebody's Korban Pesach. Okay? So the question is, even if they did a bris, but still, how were they allowed to be part of Moshe Rabbeinu's Korban Pesach if it only could be eaten, based on the family? How many people were there when you shechted it? So the Mefarshim answer like this. One answer they answer is to the first question, basically, is before Matan Torah, they're allowed to do a bris at night. Before Matan Torah, they're allowed to do bris at night. After the Torah was given, then Hashem said, no, you can only have a bris during the day. Okay, that's one answer they give. But the Rebbe explains it much differently and much deeper. There's a pasuk in Tillim that says, Laila kayem yo'ir. The night shone like the day. The night shone like a day. Okay, what does that mean? So it says like this. That night of Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Medrash says it was only lit up. It was night. It was night, but it was lit up. It was like day. Laila kayem ya'ir, the night shone like the day. And therefore, what happened over here? The whole going out of Egypt, the whole exodus of Egypt was breaking nature. The Medrash says that Egypt was so strong Afilu evet echad eina yochel lihibaris. Lilivreach. The Medrash says Egypt was so fortified, so powerful, it was impossible for a single slave to run away. That's how fortified they were. And here, in middle of the day, 2 million Jews left Egypt. If you count the men and the women and the kids and the old and the young, they make over 2 million Jews left Egypt in broad daylight. Now, how is it possible that a country that not even one slave can run away, now 2 million people ran out of Egypt? So obviously what happened, Hashem broke the barriers of nature. Hashem broke Mitzrayim. Again, Mitzrayim means limitations and boundaries. Hashem broke Mitzrayim to the extent that 2 million people were able to go out. Therefore, when the Yidden did the bris milah at night, because it was shining like day, Hashem, what does that mean, night shone like day? The boundaries and limitations of day and night didn't exist anymore. Hashem broke all barriers. The barrier of night and day, that night is dark and day is light, that was broken the night of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Therefore, Hashem was breaking every single barrier. If Hashem broke every single barrier, then there was, night became day and day became night, and 2 million people are able to roll out of Egypt. So therefore, that night, the Rabbi explains, didn't have a din of a night. It didn't have the boundaries and the constrictions of night. It was actually day. And therefore, what two mitzvahs, Korban Pesach and Bris Milah, both show supernatural. What does Pesach mean? Jumping. Whoever learns basic Chassidus explains, there's Mitzrayim, there's boundaries, and you have to Yetzias Mitzrayim. Pesach represents jumping, not walking gradually, step by step, but jumping over, but jumping over and beyond. That's what Pesach is. What's the inyan of Bris Milah? Bris Milah, you take a kid 8 days old, he doesn't have any understanding what he's doing. He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know what he's getting into. That's also breaking nature. That was the difference between Yishmael's bris and Yitzchak's bris. Yishmael's bris was at 13. 13 is bar mitzvah, the age of understanding. Yitzchak's bris, 8 days old, the Jews 8 days old, breaks barriers of nature. And therefore, this whole inyan of doing the bris at night was not an issue, because the barriers of day and night broke, the barriers of going out of Egypt broke, and therefore that night had the same din like day. Now the question is, second question, but they weren't included in Moshe Rabbeinu's shechita. How can they be part of it? And this the Rebbe explains in a different place. Our Rebbe, Moshe Rabbeinu, the first Rebbe, Moshe Rabbeinu includes within him every single Jew. Rosh B'nai Yisrael, which is acronym for Rebbe. Rosh B'nai Yisrael, we're soon going to learn about Rosh Chodesh also. What does it mean, Rosh B'nai Yisrael? The head includes within it the whole nerve center of the entire body is in the head. The entire nerve center is in the head. So therefore, what is the inyan of Rosh B'nai Yisrael? Every single neshama of every single Jew of that generation is part of the Nasi's neshama. It just branches off into a million different places. Therefore, when Moshe Rabbeinu slaughtered and shechted his Korban Pesach, automatically every Jew is included in it. It's not like if I shech the korban Pesach and you're not included, so you're not allowed to eat from my korban Pesach because we're two different people. Moshe Rabbeinu, because he was the leader of the Jewish people, who had included with his neshama, just like the head includes the entire nerve center of the body. It is the nerve center of the body and it includes every part of the body in the head. A Rebbe feels and knows every person's neshama, and every neshama is there. Therefore, when Moshe Rabbeinu brought his korban Pesach, automatically everybody was included. So therefore, the bris was allowed to be done because it was night like day. All barriers were broken. They were allowed to be, even though they weren't counted in Moshe Rabbeinu's korban Pesach, because they were included in his korban Pesach, because he was the Rebbe, the Rosh B'nai Yisrael, so everybody's included in him. So when he shechted, automatically everybody's included. Okay? There's a story that the Rebbe brings down. When the Rebbe Rashab was brought into Cheder, it's called today Hachnosa Cheder. When they bring in the frum circles, they still do it today, by the way. In the frum circles, especially in the Chassidic crowds, when a kid, after Upsharnish, different people do different ways. What they do is, how do they bring a kid? In Yiddish, it's called Einführen and Cheder. Bringing the kid into Cheder to start learning Torah. So the parents take the kid from the home, they wrap him in a talus, they cover his face, the whole body in the talus, that he shouldn't see anything. They bring him into the Cheder, they sit him down, they unwrap the talus, they uncover the eyes, and the Rebbe says to him, Aleph, and usually you put honey on it, and the kid licks the honey, and he says Torah is sweet. And then the kid says, Rebbe says Aleph, the kid repeats Aleph, and all of a sudden candies start flying at the kid. They go bays, candies flying at the kid. And what's brought down is that the kid says where the candy's coming from, and they tell the child, Malach Michal, the angel Michal, is giving you the candies. Okay? So the Rebbe Rashab had a bunch of candies from Malach Michal. It came out of Pesach. His grandfather said to his father, the Ramarash, that you better check the kids' pockets. You know, halachically, if you have chametz in the pockets before Pesach, you have to go make sure there's no chametz in the pockets. They checked the pockets, and they found the candies. And they made the kid eat the candies before Pesach. Okay, that is the story. There's two major questions in this story. First of all, the ABC of education, the Aleph Beis of Chinuch, is you never lie to a child. You never lie to a child. It's the worst thing you can do in Chinuch is lying to a child. Any educator will tell you that. Torah tells us that. Here, obviously, the angel Michal did not throw the candies at the kid. His parents did. Or his siblings, whatever. The Malach Michal didn't throw the candies. So the question is, how do you lie to a child and say that the candies came from the angel Michal? What type of education is that? And the Rebbe explains, the candies do come from Malach Michal. They really do come from Malach Michal. What does that mean? Everything in the physical world has a spiritual source. Kindness down here originates in Chesed of Atzilus, in Chesed of the higher realms. Gvura down here, severity, originates from severity of Kedusha. Secular wisdom originates from Chochma of Hashem, from the wisdom. Everything comes from God. So wisdom in the world comes from Hashem's wisdom, Acts of kindness come from Hashem's act of kindness. Act of severity comes from Hashem. But not everything comes from Hashem. So really, when a parent is giving the child the candy, what's the source of that? What's the spiritual source of that? Chesed of Atzilus, which is the angel Michal. Michal is the angel of Chesed. Gabriel is the angel of Gevura. So the Rebbe explains, you're not lying to the kid. On the contrary, this is a massive lesson in education. You are teaching a kid that when you get candies, it's not only coming from your parents. It's coming from the ultimate source of Hashem. Hashem's kindness comes down in a physical world by giving a kid candies. So not only are you not lying to the child, you're actually teaching them a very deep lesson that anything that comes in the physical world originates in God. A child of 3, first of all, the Rebbe Rashab probably did understand it at 3, but the Rebbe says, even though, how do you expect a kid to understand that? But this shows the power of education. When a child is little and you instill within them things that they don't even understand, that stays with them forever because they believe it, even though they don't understand it. There are many people that were against teaching children the miracles of Chumash. And they said, come on, the kid's not going to believe that across the sea, the man fell down. There's no way the kid's going to believe it. Don't teach it to them. And the Rebbe was adamant, and the Rabbeim, all of them, and Tzaddikim, Gedolei Ador, are adamant against it. Why? Because on the contrary, a kid believes it more than the adults. Because a kid has pure faith. It's not ruined by seichel, by intellect. It's not ruined by life. The Rebbe says a 3-year-old kid needs to be taught that whatever you have is really coming from Hashem. Now he's not going to understand it, but he gets the idea, and eventually he'll rub in, and eventually he'll live with it. But now the other question is like this. Why did they make the kid eat the candies? Halachically, we know you could sell your chametz. Why? The kid was upset. The way the story goes, the kid was upset that they made him eat the candies. The answer is, the question is, why couldn't he just sell it with the chametz? Everybody sells chametz. Why couldn't the kid sell his candies with the chametz? And this is true, another aspect of it. The child needs to know that objects of tzaddikim are holy. Objects of tzaddikim are holy. Whatever a tzaddik touches is holy. And therefore, a child needs to understand and be taught, and this what Rebbe Rashab was taught, and the Rebbe said that's why we were told the story, to learn the lessons from it. A child needs to understand that objects of holiness don't belong by a goy even temporarily. You're taking an object that Malach Michal gave him, so to speak, holy candies. You're going to sell it to a goy for 8 days? You don't do that. A child needs to be taught that objects of tzaddikim are holy. You don't sell it to a goy. And it's very interesting. The Rebbe did not want that objects, like people would bring a bottle of mashke, and the Rebbe would give a mashke, and then the Rebbe would tell them. The Rebbe wanted anything of chametz that he gave people should be finished before Pesach. The Rebbe did not want his stuff that he gave people to be sold in the chametz. Kosher bracha is not chametz. Kosher bracha is wine. You don't have to sell it in the chametz. But whiskey, alcohol is chametz. The Rebbe did not want his, and the Rebbe said clearly to people, you have to make sure to finish it before Pesach. In fact, it's known also, I'm not going into this halachic aspect of it now, but the bottom line is the Rebbe never sold his chametz to a guy. The Rebbe sold his chametz to a Jew. and that Jew sold it to a chametz, to a goy. The Rebbe never sold. When you come to the rabbi to sell chametz, you're not selling the chametz to the rabbi. You're appointing the rabbi, your agent, to sell the chametz for you to the guy on Erev Pesach. The Rebbe didn't do that. The Rebbe actually sold his chametz to a Jew. His objects only were by Jews. Afterwards, the Jew sold it to a guy, okay. But he never dealt by giving his objects to goyim. And the Rebbe said this is a lesson for this little kid. Number one, to realize, like we said before, it's holy objects. And if it's holy objects, you don't sell it to a guy, even temporarily for 8 days. And also you teach the kid you're not lying, because the reality is these candies come from Malach Michal. It's a remarkable lesson from the story. Okay, continue. In this week's Parsha, we find Rashi says it's the first mitzvah that the Torah should have begun with, and which is Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, "Achedesh hazeh lachem reish chadashim." Chapter 12 in Parshas Boy, Hashem says to Moshe, "Achedesh hazeh lachem reish chadashim." This month of Nisan should be counted as the first of the month. Rishon hu lachem l'chodshi hashana. This is the first month of the year. As we know that the months, how do we count months? Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Avel, Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev. Years we count from Tishrei. Every year Tishrei, last year was 5781 that we're in now. Next year Tishrei is going to be 5782. But how does the Torah call the name of the months? Tishrei is the 7th month. Nisan is the 1st month. HaChedesh hazeh lachem reish chadashim. Now we go to a very interesting concept. This is the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChedesh, by the way, of the Bezdin figuring out when you see the new moon. Based on that, we have Rosh Chodesh in the time of the Beis HaMikdash and afterwards. It was based on testimony of witnesses. The witnesses would come, they would testify they saw the moon. Bezdin would proclaim Rosh Chodesh, and that's how we have all the calendars that we have today, based on that original cheshbon. The Jewish calendar is called the lunar calendar. Okay? The solar calendar, which is 365 and a quarter days, that's the secular calendar. Jews' calendar is from Tishrei to Tishrei, but every month is separate. It's not the solar calendar, it's the lunar calendar. Now, what does this mean, solar calendar and lunar calendar? Everything, again, we need to learn lessons. Month is called Chodesh. Year is called Shana. In Hebrew, Shana means a year. Chodesh is a month. What's the difference between Chodesh and Shana? Chodesh comes from the word Chidush, Chodosh, new. Shana comes from the word in Hebrew, Shana means to repeat. Chazav Shana means he repeated it. He reviewed it. In the life of a Jew, we have Shana and we have Chodesh. The primary life of the Jew is Chodesh. We go by lunar calendar. The solar calendar, which is Shemesh, that is the solar calendar of 365 and a quarter days. In davening, we say, Tamidim kisidram umusafim kihilchasam. Simply, it means we're asking Hashem to take us back to the Beis HaMikdash. We should be able to do Tamidim, the Korban Talmud, the daily two twice daily sacrifice in the morning and afternoon, Varidav and Shachris and Mincha, should be Tmidim Kisidram, Umusafim, and additional Korbanis, Kihil Chosim, like the halacha is. That's the simple meaning. Comes along Chassidus, it says a much, much deeper interpretation. In the life of a Jew, there are certain things we need to do every single day, the same way. The life repeats itself. You put on tefillin, you daven, you say Shema, you do this, you say brachas, you wash nagavatsu. There are things that are done on a day-to-day basis the same way. And then there's things that are chiddush, things that are new. Meaning to midim, the daily tamid, what's done daily, that's kisidram, that's orderly. Every day is the same day, the sun comes up, the sun sets, the sun doesn't get bigger or smaller, it's the same sun setting and rising, right? It doesn't change. The moon is constantly changing. Before Rosh Chodesh, the moon disappears. Then Rosh Chodesh, a sliver comes up and big until the 15th, 14th, 15th. And then it starts going again, down, down, down. And then at the end of the month, it goes back up and down, up and down. The cycle of the moon is never the same. I mean, obviously the moon is, but what we see of the moon is never the same. The sun is always the same. The sun doesn't change. In Yiddishkeit, we need to have things that we do every day. You have set aside times for learning. That's called Shana. You have set aside times for davening, things that you do every day, the same way every day. That has to be Shana. That has to be. That's the way of serving Hashem. At the same time, a Jew needs to have a Chodesh Hazeh Lachem, the union of Chidush, constantly changing, like the moon. Always going up, 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 and then when you get to the peak, you go down to be able to come back up again. And like the Rebbe said in the Sikha, that what does this represent for a Jew? Sometimes it's the end of the month, there's no moon, and the Jew can get depressed. I'm a nothing. Jews are daimim levanu. We're likened to the moon. We counted the moon. I could get depressed. So the Torah says, don't worry. Tomorrow there's the new moon. Don't get depressed. Tomorrow's going to be even start again. And that's why the Jews are likened to the moon. That's the way they're called. We need to have Shana, the meaning. There's an Avodah that the Jews repeat every day, the same Shachris and Mincha and Maidiv, and the same learning and the same everything. At the same time, a Jew constantly has to grow. He has to grow constantly in a way of good. And even if things get concealed and problematic, the moon teaches us never give up hope. There's always hope. And the Jew constantly has to strive to do things new in life. And that's why it's interesting. When you follow the Rebbe's talks, the Rebbe would come out with a campaign. After a while, the Rebbe said, okay, time for a new one, and a new one, and a new one. Oh, come on already. I have enough already. My plate is full. The answer is a Jew has to constantly grow. That's why we're likened to the moon. We can't stay like the sun, the same, SOSO, same old every day. Jews are likened to the moon, count to the moon, likened to the moon, because we need to grow and constantly change. And that explains an interesting thing. Months, Chidush, begin in Nisan. Shana, year, begins in Tishrei. When do we get a new year? In Tishrei starts the new year. When do we start the first month? In Nisan. We've learned in the past, what's the difference between Nisan and Tishrei? Nisan is nes, miracles, change of nature, above nature. We mentioned in previous classes, the Gemara says in Brachas, if somebody has a dream with the letter Nun in it, if somebody dreamt something with the letter Nun, Hashem, the Gemara says you should know that you're going to have nisim, you're going to have miracles.
Right.
If you have a dream with two nuns, the Gemara says nisim nasa, miracles and miracles are going to happen to you because you have two nuns. What's nisin? Nisin begins with a nun and ends with a nun. The whole word is nun. What does nisin represent? Chadash, chidush, miracles, breaking nature, above Mitzrayim. That's why the months begin in Nisan, because Nisan represents supernatural, chidush. That's the enjoyment of a chidush. We learned many times, anything new, people enjoy. Something new you enjoy. Even though it's not as good as what you regularly have. But the fact it's a change, you like it. Chassidus always brings down the analogy of what's called tzipor hamedaberes, which in English means a parrot. A parrot, a bird that talks. Everybody pays big bucks, and everybody wants to listen to a parrot say a few words. Okay, you know what? People talk better than a parrot. And nobody's interested to listen to people talk. And yet the parrot said a word. Why is it? Because it's new. People like to go on vacation. I promise you, your bed is better at home. The food is better at home. Everything you have to pack and schlep and fly and come and do. And you have to unpack. When you finish, you need another vacation. So why do people want to go on a vacation? Because it's a change of scenery. That's the Avodah of Chodesh, Nisan, above nature, something new. Shana, repetition, that begins in Tishrei. What's Tishrei? Tishrei, like we learned, they spell Tishrei, Taf, Shin, Reish, Yud. It's the Aleph base backwards. It's not a level of miraculous. It's a level of nature. When did God create the world? In Tishrei. Because Hashem created the world in nature. Nature is SOS for the same old. So Shana actually begins in Tishrei. Tishrei represents not miraculous revelations of godliness. What's the month of Tishrei? Tshuva. What is Tshuva? A person elevating himself, becoming better, working on himself. That's what Tshuva is all about. That's Shana. And therefore, Chassidus explains, Chodesh, which is Chiddush, a new level of serving Hashem and a constant bettering ourselves. That's the level of Nisan. Shana, sun doesn't change, same sun, doesn't get bigger and smaller. That's the level of Shana, and that's the level of years. So that's why in the uniqueness of this Chodesh Alachem, and therefore this mitzvah was given before the Jews left Egypt, before they went to get the Torah, because Hashem is already telling them, guys, this is where you're heading. You're heading to receive the Torah, that your life should be constantly growing and doing new things. The sign of life is when things grow. When things, God forbid, stop growing, it's not a good sign. Things have to grow. Living things grow. That's the concept of Chiddush. Okay, another thing. At the end of the Parsha, in the middle of the Parsha, no, at the end of the Parsha, when the Jews are going out of Egypt, it says, and this is connected to this year Yud Shvat, by the way. So we'll talk a little bit about that, how it's connected to Yud Shvat. It says, okay, in Parak Yud Beis Pasuk Mem Aleph, it says at the end of 430 years, Yatsu Kol Tzives Hashem, left The army of Hashem, Tzivos Hashem, went out of the land of Mitzrayim. Okay, so the Jews, as we know, Tzivos Hashem, the army of God. In this year's, I don't want to elaborate on it because I want to get to the point rather than speaking about it. But this year's letter, us, in Basi Lagani, the Rebbe speaks about the level of Tzivos Hashem and the name of Hashem called Tzvokos. Or Tzvois, but we don't pronounce it that way, so we call it Tzvokos. The Chassidic Rebbe, the previous Rebbe in his Maimer Basi Lagani, says the root of the word is Tzava. Okay, Tzivos Hashem comes from the word Tzava. Today we translated Tzivos Hashem, the kids are in the army of Hashem. But there's really three definitions of the word Tzava. One is, Tzava means time. There's a pasuk that says, Halei tzva le'enesh ali aretz. There's a time that a person has on earth. When the neshama comes into the body, we're here for X amount of years. We're given X amount of time. That's one definition of tzava. Another definition of the word tzava is, he quotes psukim, that means, tzava means beauty. Tzivyene nivra. The world was created beautiful. Tzava also means beauty. What is the definition of beauty? So we're learning this in Chassidus in the morning. You cannot have beauty from one color. You cannot have a beautiful symphony with one orchestra. Well, I'm sorry, with one instrument. Thank you. With one instrument. You need to have many instruments blending together in harmony. What is a beautiful picture? You take different colors, contrasting colors, opposite colors, but when they blend together in harmony, you create a beautiful picture. Instruments that clash and totally don't make sense together, when they blend together in harmony, you have a beautiful symphony. That's the second definition of tzava. So one is amount of time we have. The second interpretation of tzava is beauty. And the third interpretation of tzava is, like we said before, chayil, soldier. Tzava is an army.
Right there.
Tzava is an army, and therefore that's what tzava is, a soldier. And the previous Rebbe elaborates on all three. And we have a few minutes. I want to explain what this means. The Friedrich Rebbe writes in his Basi Lagani that a person needs to realize, he says the expression, Ein Adam Yadei Ita V'Regoyev. None of us know when we're going to die. Nobody knows.
Where is it in the notebook stuff?
Okay, look in my room.
Okay, not there.
You have to unmute yourself. Okay. Now, a person needs to know that when Hashem sends us down into the world, he gives us a mission. He gives us a mission. And that mission takes the amount of time that we have to live. If Hashem gives somebody 80 years, their mission takes 80 years to accomplish. You have 60 years, you have 60 years. You have 120 years, you have 120 years to accomplish the mission. A Jew is called Tzivos Hashem because a Jew needs to realize we are given a mission, and that mission is given X amount of time to do it. And if we waste time, we will not accomplish the mission. That's number one a Jew needs to keep in mind. Another interesting interpretation of tzava, beauty. The beauty of Yiddishkeit, and this is where tolerance for each other comes in. Hashem made, there's like this. Ashkenazic, Sephardic, Chassidic, not Chassidic. In Chassidic, 1,000,000 Chassidics. In Litvisha, 1,000,000 Litvisha. 1,000,000 Sephardics, 1,000,000 Ashkenazic, 1,000,000. Why did Hashem make us so many different customs and so many different ideas in Yiddishkeit. This itself is the beauty of Yiddishkeit. The beauty, if every Jew would serve Hashem exactly the same way, it's a picture with one color. It's a symphony with one instrument. A million instruments, but the same instrument. All it does is hakachainik. The beauty of Yiddishkeit is dafka the fact, is really the fact that there's so many different ways of serving God, but when they blend together in harmony to create a beautiful picture, when they blend together in harmony to serve Hashem, then you create a phenomenal picture, a phenomenal symphony. And therefore, if I serve Hashem my way and you serve Hashem your way, I need to tolerate your way of serving Hashem. Because your way and my way together make a beautiful way. If everybody's going to serve Hashem my way, there ain't going to be any beauty. There's not going to be any beauty in that. So a Jew needs to know we are called Sivas Hashem because the beauty is dafka the fact that I tolerate the Sardim and Ashkenazim and the Chassidic and the not Chassidic and that Chassidic and that Chassidic, and everybody is tolerated. That is the ultimate beauty of Yiddishkeit. That's the second thing we need to keep in Sivas Hashem. The third, Sava is getting late. Sava means a soldier. What is a soldier's mission in life? Kabbalah Sel, acceptance of the yoke. Do what you're told. I mentioned this morning, we heard this when we were in high school. We heard from Rabbi Khan. He told us the following. There's a scenario that a soldier was given orders by his general in a battle. The soldier was given orders by the general. The soldier did not listen. And because he didn't listen, they won the war. Because he didn't listen, they won the war. So now what do you do to the soldier? Do you honor him or do you court-martial him? And the answer is you court-martial him. Why? Because the job of a soldier is not to win a war. The job of a soldier is to do what the commanding officer tells him to do. It doesn't matter if he won the war or not. He did not fulfill his mission. His mission is to have Kabbalah's oil, to accept the guidance and directives of the bosses. And that's what a Jew's life is all about. We are some soldiers. We accept everything Hashem does. Do I understand it? Of course not. But do I do it? I'm supposed to. And these are the three interpretations of why the Jews going out of Egypt are called Sivas Hashem, because this explains what the Jew is all about. We have a mission with a set amount of time in life. We must tolerate one another because it's all part of the beautiful picture. And the third thing is, I'm a soldier. I need to do what Hashem wants me to do, not what I want to do. And then we become Sivas Hashem. We become Hashem soldiers. We become the army of Hashem, and we can go into Eretz Yisrael and bring Mashiach. Okay, I just want to mention again, this Wednesday there's no class. The following Monday and Wednesday there is no Zoom class. So the next Zoom class is 2 weeks from tonight, the Mitzvah Hashem, February 1st.
Thank you very much.
Everybody have a wonderful 2 weeks.
Thank
And
you.
you can learn a lot of Torah anyway. There's plenty of classes, and just don't waste your time.
Rabbi.
Everybody have a great evening and a great week. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
We'll miss you.